everyone. Welcome to Game Changers, the future of play, where we explore AI, gaming, and the business of play. I'm Toni Callahan, and I'm here with my podcast team, Diego Ventura and Sarah Ramos. Today, we have a special guest, Robert Wynne, who's a studio founder and game developer. He's a leader building at the intersection of global game development, creative strategy, and cross-cultural talent. Rob's currently developing a new game with an international team, taking a thoughtful approach to how premium games are created for global audiences. With experience across studio leadership, production, and global collaboration, Rob offers a sharp perspective on where premium games are headed and how studios can stand out in a crowded market. Today, we're going to hear Rob's insights on industry trends, global game development strategy, the evolution of premium games, and practical lessons studios and executives can apply right now. Rob, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for the invite, Toni. And that was a very flattering introduction. I don't think I can live up to that that level of insight, but I'll try.
You'll do great. Well, before we jump into some, big picture trends, I'd like to start with your path and kind of your career. You have a, background that spans studio founding, game development, and building globally distributed teams, which gives you a unique vantage point in the industry. So kind of starting at the beginning, how did you first get into gaming and game development?
So I was in the Navy, and then I got out of the Navy. I went to business school, and I didn't know, like, I knew that the video game industry existed, but I had no idea if you could get a job in the game industry. And then Activision came to the campus, and all my favorite games are, well, Blizzard games, but I got very, very lucky in that someone at Activision, the Call of Duty endowment, took a chance on me to get a summer internship, and then I converted that into a full-time, this 2-year rotational program at Activision, which was the best program ever. So really, it was the veteran background that got me in, but I feel pretty lucky. In the game industry, it's like very hard to break into like the big players, but once you're kind of in, you're kind of in. So I got very fortunate that someone took a chance on me.
I love that. And yeah, what a great first gaming company to be with. Activision is, one of the largest. So that's definitely a great place to start. And then what led you to eventually start your own studio and begin developing your current game?
I guess the short version is I was gonna move to China, and then COVID happened, and it was very difficult for me to get over there. And I made friends with some people in China who are pretty senior in the game industry. And one of my friends was discussing with me the status of his project he was working on, and we'd been friends for about 4 years, 5 years at this point. And we've shared a lot of ideas about like what we think the future of game development and like what the future of what would be a successful type of game or game development process would be. And essentially, the our times aligned with his project and coming to an end. And so I pitched him and his team to join me on doing his idea. But it's very I think a lot of game development, like studio founding stories, are like pretty happenstance or serendipitous, and definitely this one, just right place, right time, right group of people.
Definitely. Yeah. And certainly with everything that happened in the pandemic, it seems like, it's set everyone on a slightly new path. So I love that.
Yeah.
Well, now that we know how you got here, we'd love to dive into some of the insights that only someone actively building a premium game would be able to share. You're kind of developing in a moment where global competition is really intense, player expectations are rising, and studios have to be much more intentional about where and how they compete. That being said, what's one major trend you're seeing right now that's shaping how premium games are being developed?
I'll try to keep it to like my area of expertise because I'm sure you're getting people on to talk about AI and all that stuff. And but smaller, faster, more nimble teams of serious professionals, like I think is the future. Outside of live service, AAA, big brand games, I think the future is teams, full-time employee teams of less than 20, and just agility. I guess is like I think probably the number one word is agility. I mean, uh, a lot of games are just taking too long to get made, and then they're made for a market that doesn't exist anymore. And so you have to be very agile. In order to be agile, you have to be small. You can't have a middle management structure that kind of prevents pivoting very quickly based on feedback and all that kind of stuff. So I think smaller, agile teams, but still highly professional. I mean, I think people kind of bemoan the whole ladder being pulled up on junior developers, and we could talk about that. But like, I mean, you need a core group of senior developers that know what they're doing, that have the agility to respond to market demands.
That makes sense. And you've talked a little bit about how, different regional markets are evolving a little bit. How do you see China fitting into that, broader global shift, and how has that influenced your approach?
I'll try to keep it brief, but basically, China was making games for China for 20 years, right? They were, and 20 years ago, China people were starting to get cell phones. There were internet cafes. People couldn't afford consoles or PCs, and then consoles got banned for a while. So they developed free to play, mobile games was like the primary China market. And very recently, like the last like 7 or 8 years, China's kind of come of age in premium development as well. China was also kind of the factory for a lot of asset creation for big companies like Ubisoft, Activision, et cetera. And there was just a general consensus that China couldn't lead the way in making premium games. Um, and I think you could recognize like 6 or 7 years ago that this was not true anymore. But it really, to me, became true in 2020 when the trailer for Black Myth Wukong dropped. And then it became obvious to the world when Black Myth Wukong came out and smashed expectations with like over 30 million units sold. But I guess the evolution of China is from servicing its domestic market, which was just a greenfield growth at all costs kind of strategy, to now that part of the industry is maturing, and now there's more demand amongst more increasingly sophisticated Chinese players for good premium experiences. And then conversely, you have the rest of the world where development costs are rising, especially in the West. And there's an increasing disconnect between large players and what the gamers want, and a new generation of gamers who are less tied to brands and more tied to experiences, and so they're willing to try. Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they're more and more willing to try other cultures' products as long as they find it entertaining. So China's able to take this opportunity, I hope, to service global gamers where they're at in a way that I think the Western industry struggled to do, um, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really exciting to get kind of a new flavor going in the gaming industry. And it seems to evolve so fast. So it'll be neat to see kind of where it goes. And a little bit in that same vein, speaking of things moving quickly, of course, AI is a very hot topic right now. Of course, we're biased because we've been in the space for so long. But from your studio leadership perspective, how are you thinking about where AI fits or maybe doesn't fit into what you're doing today?
Oh man, it's a hot topic, right?
Sure.
I mean, I've got some hot takes, but I spend a lot of my time reading Chinese social media and watching Chinese gaming and all this kind of stuff, and it's becoming increasingly obvious, I think, to most people I talk to, that AI is going to be a key part of the future of game development. I work with a lot of I have a friend who started a studio here in Indianapolis who I've been helping, and he's just able to generate. 2 years ago, I thought it was kind of the AI was not able to produce really anything serviceable. I think in 2 or 3 more years, AI will be able to produce at a remarkable rate assets and experiences. But what AI can't do is create fun. And so you need to have people that are skilled at finding fun, finding what players want using AI. But I mean, at my studio, our policy is what does the gamer want? Like our whole company philosophy is trying to service gamers, right? If every gamer on the planet was so anti AI that they wouldn't play any game that had AI in it, well, we wouldn't use AI, right? But I think that again, I don't want to get political or anything about it, but like there is a very loud group of people who are anti AI, and what I think they are anti is anti like slop, right? I mean, that's the Merriam-Webster word of the year last year, slop, right? Um, I think that as soon as AI is able to create experiences that are uh, meaningful, I guess, or enjoyable for the player, I mean, I think players are going to speak with their wallets, and so yeah, at our studio we're dabbling with AI, but if something doesn't pass muster when it comes to the quality bar, then we toss it out. So that does that mean how much AI do you use or whatever? I think that even the biggest people in the industry, like the head of Larian Studios, like they're signaling what's coming, which is the best people need to be using AI every day to iterate to like test their ideas. But when it comes to implementing in games, if it doesn't pass muster in something that a player wants, throw it out. Don't use it.
I like that.
Hey,
Oh, sorry,
No, go
Tony, can
ahead. Go
I
ahead.
sneak in?
Yes.
Robert, are you finding a different attitudes from gamers in China? So what I'm thinking about is when it comes to AI, like for example, what we have noticed in our implementation, for some reason, Australia is very our experience has been that they embrace quite a bit AI assistant for support. They love them, they like to interact with them. I'm not sure if we were lacking the implementation that we have done, or it's really the fact that Australian, for some reason, are a little bit more in favor of using this type of technology. Are you seeing some differences like between American players or Western players, let's say, and Chinese one?
Oh, 100%. I think that the Chinese, just in general, are much more willing to adopt AI than Westerners are, especially Americans, like much more. And I don't want to get into the whole societal like their willingness to experiment with it when it's clearly going to be like that could be a differentiator between cultures. But the gamers, I mean, from what I can tell, and again, I'm not. I'll couch this by saying I'm not Chinese, and like my partner and people in the studio in China are going to be much more savvy on what the zeitgeist in China. But from what I read all the time, like it's amongst the most sophisticated gamers, it's kind of similar to the West, where it's like if it's slop, it's slop. But I think that there's not the hangups around the there's no hangups about playing things that have AI as long as it's good, right? And the
Yeah.
willingness to adopt AI, at least like for example, in work and in life, the Chinese are much more willing to do so than Americans. I think else equal.
Yeah. Got it, got it. And then also, we have to be careful because when we talk AI, like in relation to the gaming industry, there is AI within the game, meaning, prescribing the next scene in a game, etc. That use of AI, and then there is AI that is used in a much more practical way for providing support for the game or setup of the game or whatever, right? And so there is a big distinction there because I think a lot of the pushback that I've seen in the Western world about AI in gaming is probably related about the creativity aspect of things. But when it comes to the logistics, I'm not seeing the same thing. Like getting an answer, if you can get it quicker and faster, then it's better. So that's my observation. So there is a big difference between the two.
Yeah, and I want to just make sure I say that I'm not trying to give any sort of like moral or ethical take on this stuff or legal take for sure. I have my own personal thoughts on like what I think legally we need to try to start doing. And like I'm very aware of generative AI like taking from things and how that's basically, more or less theft, right? But I'm saying that until we figure out the landscape for this stuff, like people need to be experimenting with it and figuring it out, right? Because
Yeah.
whenever the playing field is being the rules for the game have not yet been established, but like once they get established, there's going to be I'll point to the sorry to take a little journey, but like there was a SAG-AFTRA the union for they came out with new rules a couple months ago about voice acting, and I thought it was
Mhm.
very profound because it was essentially you need to use the real voice actors, but then you can pay them to basically train off their voice and then make like smaller dialogue. And when I think about my game, right, that we're making, it's going to have maybe 14,000 plus lines of dialogue. It's logistically like very hard for all the parties to production wise. It's extremely hard to coordinate getting that in multiple different languages. But if you can pay people for their likeness essentially and put it in the game, I think that's a win for everybody, right? And so,
Yeah.
I mean, and then you string this out across all the different. The problem is that if you're taking when you're using like a voice actor, for example, like that's one person, right? It's easy to do to implement a contract with that one person or the organization that manages them. Um, but conversely, for generative AI for like art assets, right? That's just pulled from the internet essentially, and so there needs to be a legal playing field that's established quickly. But in the absence of that legal field or the absence of like platform rules, for example, like Steam, like people need to be if you're not doing it, like your competition will do it. And if it's
Yeah.
good, the players will play it and you lose, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a prisoner's dilemma and to not respond to it. So I hope that makes sense. But that's generally my take is you kind of have to be using it because if you don't, then your competition will. And as long as it's good, the player, I believe in a few years, the player won't really care.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Maybe I'll make a lot of players real mad when they find this later on. But I mean, I think that there's a, sorry to take it down another path, but like I think that there's stated versus revealed preferences, right? And when you're trying to make games, you should look at revealed preferences, not stated preferences. You should see, okay, what are people buying and playing versus what are they getting really loud about? And I think the data is going to start showing in a few years that like substantial amount of generative AI in a video game won't bother the vast majority of players. I mean, say what you will about that notion, but that's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I was thinking like AI is such a buzzword right now that everybody's kind of listing and they want to take action, but give it a few years and people are just going to think of AI as just part of the process. So yeah,
it's a tool, right? It's a tool. Unfortunately, that tool harvests like other content that is created by other people, but it's a tool that we have to establish the rules around the tool. But I think the buzzword and the amount of emotion that we put on it, right? It's just a tool. It's just an algorithm.
Yeah, I like that. Well, last question from me, and then we'll shift over to Sarah. So zooming out a little bit, for any studio leaders or executives listening, what's one practical lesson they could take from how you're approaching development right now?
Well, I'll just start by saying that I founded a studio and we have an unannounced game, so I'm not sure that people are going to listen to my personal ethos. My credibility to tell other studios what to do is probably pretty limited. But what I will say is the way you build and incentivize people to make games currently in the West and just in general in the large industry is increasingly, I think, obsolete. So, for example, video games like premium games are a project-based endeavor, right? You have no revenue for years, and then all of a sudden you have lots of revenue, and then you have no cost, or you have a fixed cost structure, right? It's very similar to movies in that way, premium games, right? And so for our studio, for example, the way we incentivize our talent is like, and this is just what you kind of have to do, is all of our employees own a much larger percent of the company than like would be typical of a tech company in the States or whatever. And you see these popping up, like there's a couple collective studios. There's one in France that's pretty famous, but I guess the long story short is a studio leader's primary job is incentive alignment. I think is how do you get the right talent working together toward the right goal. And I think that in the game industry, and especially in the West, there's this expectation. Like in the West, the average developer makes $144,000 a year in salary in the United States, and that's just the United States. Like if you isolate that to like Los Angeles, where I was working, right, it's approaching 200,000, right? And so I think that's like poor incentive alignment for the. Okay, taking a step back, I think that premium games will require fewer and fewer people to make in the future. Because of that, you don't need to have giant teams of people with salaries that are kind of sitting there fixed, learning the proprietary processes to make a big game. You need a smaller, nimble team that is basically trying to take a shot on goal, right? And because there's going to be, 20,000 games that are released this year, and there's going to be 30,000 next year, and et cetera, et cetera. The primary job is to break out. The primary job is to make something that breaks out. And so, I mean, unfortunately, I view the game industry as getting increasingly unstable for full-time employment because your incentive structure is essentially like there's going to be such a small percentage of games that break out. Now, I think you can reduce that by basically, our studio, for example, is going to be at a production value that indies can't match, but also at a agility that and a price point that giant companies can't match. But sorry, I'm getting out of pocket here, but I think that the primary job of a studio founder is to align incentives of their people, and the incentives in the game industry for talent are just dramatically different than they were just 5 years ago.
Yep, lots of change.
Yeah, I like that.
Great. So let's jump right into the rapid fire questions. I have 5 here, and they're designed to be high energy and quick answers. So are you ready for it?
Sure.
First one, favorite video game or gaming memory?
The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind is my favorite video game of all time.
Awesome. One tool or technology you can't live without while developing?
I'm probably not a good person to ask because I'm like not really a developer, but I guess pass. I'm not going to give a good answer for that.
Okay. How about we take off the development part of it and say one tool or technology that you can't live without? Could be anything.
I mean, I guess Zoom, right? I couldn't afford my company without Zoom or the
That's a good
technology,
one,
right?
yeah. Absolutely. Biggest trend in gaming that excites you right now?
The rise of quality Chinese game development.
Good one. One piece of advice for studio founders or game executives.
If you're starting, don't go do something else.
All right, and last one from me. If you weren't building games, what would you be doing?
Oof. Probably something related to AI. Probably something related to more physical implementation of AI, since I think that's where a lot of money's going to be made in the future is physical plus AI.
Love that. Very cool. Rob, thank you so much for your time and sharing your perspective. Really appreciate it. And it's great to hear about, what's going on, especially as we become, more global in the gaming industry. So, from your leadership to building these new games with these, international creative teams, I think your insights offer a great look at how the gaming world is evolving and, looking at market shifts, cross-cultural collaboration, and the role of new technologies, I think provides valuable takeaways for anyone who is building, leading, or investing in games right now. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Hope to, have credibility when we actually are able to reveal what we've been doing.
Yes, we're excited to see.
Thank you.
We'll have to
Me
do a little
too.
update.
Yeah, maybe we should have him back. Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. We should have
Let's
him
have you
back and
back.
get an update.
Yeah,
Give me a year, and then hopefully we'll have
Perfect.
announced our game, and then it'll be, unless the internet hates it, and in which case you don't need to call me. But if the internet loves it, then I certainly have a different perspective.
It's gonna go great. It's gonna go great. But yeah,
Thank you very
we'll
much.
check in a year. But for everyone listening, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to follow Game Changers: The Future of Play on Spotify, or visit our website at securaqs.ai, and the details will be in the caption as well. Robert, thank you so much, and we'll see everyone in the next episode.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Diego. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you,
Robert.
Robert.
See ya.